Have you ever felt like your life is repeating the same patterns again and again? The same mistakes, the same thoughts, the same results? What if I tell you this is not random? Your mind is following hidden patterns you don't even notice. Today, you will discover how these patterns control your life and how you can change them. Our brain is powerful, but it loves habits and routines. This is called pattern thinking. It means your mind creates shortcuts based on past experiences. These patterns help you make quick decisions, but sometimes they also keep you stuck. Understanding these mental patterns can help you grow, improve your decisions, and build a better life. Point 1. Your mind is always trying to save energy, so it builds patterns from your daily experiences. Every time you repeat a thought or action, your brain makes it easier to do it again. This is how habits are formed. For example, if you always think "I am not good enough," your brain accepts this as a pattern, and you start to believe it without question. Over time, this thought becomes automatic, and it affects your confidence, your actions, and even your future decisions. The surprising part is that many of these patterns are not true. They are just learned from past situations, childhood experiences, or repeated failures. Your brain does not always check if the pattern is helpful or harmful. It only follows what is familiar. This is why some people stay in negative cycles, even when they want to change. However, the good news is that patterns can be changed. When you become aware of your thoughts, you start to break the automatic cycle. You can question your beliefs and replace negative patterns with positive ones. For example, instead of thinking "I can't do this," you can train your mind to say "I will try and improve." At first, it feels difficult because your brain prefers old patterns. But with repetition, the new pattern becomes stronger. Just like muscles grow with exercise, your brain also changes with practice. This process is called rewiring your mind. When you change your patterns, you change your behavior, and when your behavior changes, your life begins to change. Point 2. Many of the patterns in your mind are created by your environment and the people around you. From a young age, your brain starts learning by watching, listening, and copying others. If you grow up hearing negative words, fear, or doubt, your mind slowly builds patterns based on those messages. For example, if someone often tells you that success is hard or you are not smart, your brain may accept this as truth, even if it is not real. These ideas become part of your thinking system, and later in life, they guide your choices without you noticing. This is why two people can face the same situation but react in completely different ways, because their mental patterns are different. One person may see opportunity, while another sees risk and fear. The interesting part is that your brain does not stop learning. Even now, your patterns are changing based on what you watch, read, and listen to every day. This means you have more control than you think. If you start choosing better inputs, like positive content, helpful knowledge, and supportive people, you can slowly build stronger and healthier patterns. It is like feeding your mind with better fuel. Also, repeating small positive actions every day can create powerful long-term changes. For example, practicing gratitude, learning new skills, or setting small goals can train your brain to focus on growth instead of fear. At first, these changes may feel small, but over time they create a big difference. Your environment is not just around you, it becomes part of you. So if you want to change your life, you must also change what you allow into your mind. Point 3. Your brain does not clearly separate imagination from reality, and this is one of the most powerful and surprising facts about pattern thinking. When you repeat a thought many times, your brain starts to treat it like a real experience. For example, if you constantly imagine failure or fear, your body reacts with stress even if nothing bad is actually happening. This is because your brain is following a pattern it already knows. In the same way, if you imagine success, confidence, and positive results, your brain begins to build new patterns that support these ideas. This process is called mental rehearsal, and many successful people use it to prepare for challenges. Athletes, speakers, and leaders often visualize their success before it happens. Over time, this practice helps their brain feel familiar with success, so when the real moment comes, they act with more confidence. The key idea here is that your thoughts are not just ideas, they are instructions for your brain. If you keep thinking the same negative thoughts, your brain becomes stronger in that direction. But if you choose better thoughts and repeat them, your brain starts to change. It is important to understand that this does not happen instantly. Your old patterns may feel stronger at the beginning, and your mind may try to return to them. But if you stay consistent and patient, new patterns will grow. One simple way to start is by being aware of your inner voice. Notice how you talk to yourself during difficult moments. Then slowly guide your thoughts into a more helpful direction. This small step can create a powerful shift over time. When you learn to guide your thoughts, you begin to guide your life, because your mind always follows the patterns you give it. Point 4. Your patterns become strongest when they turn into automatic actions, and this is where real change becomes difficult but also very powerful. When something becomes automatic, you no longer think about it, you just do it. For example, checking your phone again and again, delaying your work, or reacting with anger can all be results of deep mental patterns. These actions feel natural, but they are actually learned behaviors repeated many times. The brain creates these automatic responses to save time and energy, but it does not judge if they're good or bad. This is why breaking a bad pattern feels uncomfortable. Your brain sees change as something new and risky, so it tries to pull you back to what feels safe and familiar. However, this is exactly where growth begins. If you can pause for a moment before reacting, you create a small space between the pattern and your action. In that small space, you have the power to choose differently. For example, instead of reacting with anger, you can take a breath and respond calmly. Instead of delaying your work, you can start with just one small step. These small changes may not feel important at first, but they slowly weaken the old pattern and build a new one. Consistency is the key here. You do not need to be perfect, you just need to repeat the better choice more often. Over time, the new behavior becomes easier and more natural. Your brain starts to accept it as the new normal. This is how you take control back from automatic patterns. When you become aware of your actions and practice small changes daily, you are not just changing habits, you are redesigning the way your mind works, and this can lead to powerful and lasting transformation in your life. Point 5. One of the most powerful ways to change your mental patterns is through repetition and consistency, because your brain learns best by doing the same thing again and again. Many people try to change their life in one big step, but this often fails because the brain prefers small and repeated actions. When you repeat a simple positive behavior every day, your brain slowly builds a new pathway, and this pathway becomes stronger over time. For example, if you decide to read for just 10 minutes every day, it may feel small at first, but after some weeks, it becomes a natural part of your routine. The same is true for your thoughts. If you repeat positive and realistic thoughts daily, your brain begins to accept them as normal. At the same time, the old negative patterns become weaker because they are used less. This process is similar to building a road. When you use a road often, it becomes clear and strong, but when you stop using it, it slowly disappears. Another important point is patience. Your brain does not change in one day because your current patterns were built over a long time. So you must give yourself time to grow. It is also helpful to track your progress, even in small ways. When you see that you are improving, your motivation increases and your brain connects change with a positive feeling. This makes it easier to continue. In addition, try to connect your new habits with your daily routine. For example, you can practice positive thinking after waking up or before sleeping. This makes the new pattern easier to remember. In the end, success is not about big actions, it is about small actions repeated many times. When you stay consistent, your brain adapts, your patterns change, and your life starts to move in a new and better direction. Point 6. Your identity is deeply connected to your mental patterns, and this is one of the most important ideas to understand. The way you see yourself is not fixed, it is built from repeated thoughts, experiences, and actions over time. If you often think "I am lazy" or "I am not confident," your brain creates patterns that support this identity, and you start acting in ways that match it. This means your patterns are not just habits, they shape who you believe you are. The powerful truth is that when you change your patterns, you also change your identity. Instead of trying to force big results, you can focus on becoming a different version of yourself step by step. For example, instead of saying "I want success," you can say "I am a person who learns and improves every day." This small shift helps your brain build a new identity, and your actions start to follow naturally. Another important point is that your brain looks for proof to support your identity. If you believe you are improving, your mind will notice small wins and progress. But if you believe you are failing, your mind will focus on mistakes. This is why your self-image is so powerful, it filters your reality. To change this, you can start by choosing a simple identity you want to build, like being disciplined, calm, or focused. Then support this identity with small daily actions. Even one small action can send a strong message to your brain. Over time, these actions become patterns, and these patterns become your new identity. It is not about pretending, it is about practicing. The more you act in alignment with your new identity, the more real it becomes. In the end, when you change how you see yourself, you change how you think, how you act, and how you live. Point 7. One of the biggest hidden patterns in the mind is the fear of change, and this fear often works silently in the background of your life. Even when you want to grow, improve, or try something new, your brain may resist it. This happens because your mind is designed to protect you, not to make you successful. It prefers what is familiar, even if it is not good for you. For example, staying in a comfortable but unproductive routine feels safer than trying something new and possibly failing. This creates a pattern where you avoid risks and stay in the same place. Over time, this fear becomes stronger, and you may start believing that you are not ready or not capable. But the truth is, this is just a mental pattern, not reality. The good news is that fear can be trained, just like any other pattern. When you face small challenges regularly, your brain slowly learns that change is not dangerous. For example, speaking in front of a small group, trying a new skill, or stepping out of your comfort zone in simple ways can begin to break this pattern. Each time you take action, even if it is not perfect, you send a signal to your brain that you are safe and capable. Another helpful method is to change how you see fear. Instead of seeing it as a stop sign, you can see it as a sign of growth. When you feel fear, it often means you are moving toward something important. This shift in thinking can reduce the power of fear over time. It is also important to remember that confidence does not come before action, it comes after repeated action. The more you face your fears, the more your brain adapts, and the old pattern becomes weaker. In the end, breaking the fear pattern allows you to move forward, explore new opportunities, and create a life that is not controlled by limits, but guided by growth. Point 8. Your focus is one of the strongest forces that shapes your mental patterns, because whatever you focus on grows in your mind. The brain is like a filter, it cannot process everything at once, so it chooses what seems most important based on your attention. If you often focus on problems, stress, and negative situations, your brain starts building patterns that look for more of the same. You begin to notice more difficulties, even in normal situations, and this creates a cycle of negativity. On the other hand, if you train your focus toward solutions, learning, and opportunities, your brain builds patterns that support growth and positivity. This does not mean you ignore problems, but you choose how much attention you give them. For example, instead of thinking, "Why is this happening to me?" you can shift to, "What can I learn from this?" This simple change in focus can create a completely different mental pattern over time. Another important idea is that your focus is limited, so where you spend it matters a lot. Social media, negative news, and constant distractions can weaken your ability to focus and create scattered thinking patterns. This makes it harder for your brain to build strong and useful pathways. To improve this, you can practice directing your attention on purpose. Start with small steps, like focusing on one task at a time, reducing distractions, or taking short moments to reflect on positive things in your day. These actions help your brain become more stable and clear. Over time, your focus becomes stronger, and your thinking becomes more intentional instead of automatic. When you control your focus, you begin to control your patterns, and when your patterns change, your decisions improve. In the end, your life follows where your attention goes, so learning to guide your focus is one of the most powerful skills you can develop. Point 9. Your daily decisions are not as free as you think, because most of them are guided by hidden mental patterns. From the moment you wake up until you go to sleep, your brain is making thousands of small choices, and many of them happen automatically. What you eat, how you react to people, how you use your time, these actions often follow patterns you have built over time. This is why change can feel difficult, even when you truly want it. Your conscious mind may want something new, but your subconscious patterns keep pulling you back to familiar behaviors. The important thing to understand is that awareness is the first step to changing this cycle. When you start noticing your daily decisions, you begin to see the patterns behind them. For example, you may realize that you check your phone when you feel bored, or you avoid tasks when they feel difficult. These small observations are very powerful, because they bring your automatic actions into your control. Once you are aware, you can begin to interrupt the pattern. You do not need to change everything at once, just start with one small decision. For example, when you feel the urge to delay your work, you can choose to start for just 5 minutes. This small action breaks the pattern and creates a new direction. Another helpful strategy is to plan your decisions in advance. When you decide ahead of time what you will do, your brain has a clear path to follow, and it becomes easier to act. Over time, these planned actions become new patterns, and they start working automatically in your favor. It is also important to be kind to yourself during this process. Changing patterns takes time, and mistakes are part of learning. Instead of feeling frustrated, you can see each moment as a new chance to choose better. In the end, when you take control of your daily decisions, you slowly take control of your patterns, and this leads to real and lasting change in your life. Point 10. In the end, all mental patterns come together to shape your future, because what you think, repeat, and practice today becomes your reality tomorrow. Your life is not only the result of big decisions, but mostly the result of small patterns you follow every day. If your patterns are negative, automatic, and unconscious, they can slowly lead you away from your goals without you even noticing. But if your patterns are positive, intentional, and focused, they can guide you toward growth and success step by step. The powerful idea here is that you always have the ability to redesign your patterns, no matter your past. Your brain is flexible, and it can change at any time if you give it the right direction and repetition. One important step is to create clear goals, because your patterns need a direction to follow. When you know what you want, it becomes easier to build daily actions that support that goal. Another key point is to protect your patterns. Once you build a good habit, you must take care of it by staying consistent and avoiding distractions that can break it. It is also helpful to review your progress regularly. When you reflect on what is working and what is not, you make your patterns stronger and more effective. Remember, success is not something that happens suddenly. It is built quietly through daily repetition. Even on days when you feel unmotivated, small actions still matter because they keep your pattern alive. Over time, these small actions create big results. In addition, your mindset plays a big role in keeping your pattern strong. If you believe that change is possible, your brain will support your effort. But if you doubt yourself, your patterns may weaken. So it is important to build both strong habits and a strong belief in yourself. In the end, when you understand and control your mental patterns, you are no longer living on autopilot. You are living with purpose, direction, and the power to create the life you truly want. Point 11. One of the most important but often ignored patterns in the mind is the way you respond to failure. Many people see failure as something negative, and their brain creates a pattern of fear, avoidance, and self-doubt after a bad experience. For example, if you try something new and it does not work, your mind may quickly say, "I am not good at this," and this thought can become a repeated pattern. Over time, this pattern stops you from trying again, and it limits your growth. But in reality, failure is not the opposite of success, it is part of the process. The most successful people build a different pattern in their mind. They see failure as feedback. Instead of stopping, they ask, "What can I learn from this?" This simple shift changes everything. Your brain starts to look for lessons instead of problems, and this builds a growth pattern. Another important idea is that your emotional reaction to failure shapes your future actions. If you react with frustration and negativity, your brain connects effort with pain, and it becomes harder to try again. But if you stay calm and curious, your brain connects effort with learning, and it becomes easier to continue. This does not mean you will not feel disappointed, it means you choose how long you stay in that feeling. One helpful method is to separate yourself from the result. Instead of thinking "I failed," you can think "this attempt did not work." This keeps your identity strong while allowing your actions to improve. Over time, this creates a powerful pattern of resilience. You become someone who does not stop easily, someone who learns, adapts, and grows. In addition, each time you try again, your brain gathers more experience, and your chances of success increase. In the end, when you change your pattern toward failure, you remove one of the biggest mental barriers, and you open the door to continuous improvement and long-term success. Point 12. Another critical pattern that shapes your mind is the way you handle stress and pressure. Life is full of challenges, and your brain reacts automatically to stress, often creating patterns that can be either helpful or harmful. For example, when you feel stressed, some people automatically react with panic, overthinking, or avoidance. This is because their brain has learned a survival pattern: stress equals danger, so it triggers fear responses. Over time, this becomes a strong habit, and even small challenges can feel overwhelming. On the other hand, some people develop patterns that allow them to respond calmly and strategically under pressure. They have trained their minds to see stress as a signal rather than a threat. This is called adaptive patterning, and it is a skill you can build with practice. One way to create positive stress patterns is through small, consistent exposure to challenges. By facing manageable difficulties regularly, your brain learns that stress does not always mean danger, and your response becomes more controlled. Another method is to use mental techniques such as deep breathing, visualization, or mindfulness. These practices create new neural pathways that support calm, focused thinking even in high-pressure situations. It is also helpful to reframe stressful events as opportunities for growth. When your brain starts to associate challenge with learning rather than fear, it creates a completely different mental pattern. Over time, this pattern becomes automatic. You respond to pressure with clarity and action rather than panic. Additionally, the people around you influence these patterns. Being around calm, resilient, and positive individuals helps reinforce adaptive stress responses, while constant exposure to negativity can strengthen unhelpful stress patterns. In the long run, mastering your stress response is not about eliminating pressure, it is about training your brain to respond in ways that support your goals. Point 13. One of the most fascinating patterns in the mind is how it forms beliefs, because beliefs are not just thoughts, they are deep mental pathways that guide your behavior and perception. Many beliefs are created automatically from early experiences, repeated messages from others, or cultural norms. For example, if you were often told you are not creative or money is hard to earn, your brain accepts these statements as patterns of truth. Over time, they influence how you think, the choices you make, and even the opportunities you notice. What is surprising is that your brain often clings to these patterns even when you consciously know they are not true. This is why some people struggle to achieve goals despite having knowledge or skills. They are being guided by old mental patterns instead of new possibilities. The good news is that beliefs are not fixed, they can be changed by awareness, repetition, and experience. The first step is noticing which beliefs are guiding your thoughts and actions. For example, you can reflect on areas of your life where you feel stuck, frustrated, or limited, and trace these feelings back to the underlying belief. Once you identify it, you can start replacing it with a more empowering belief. This does not happen overnight, because your old patterns are strong and familiar, but each time you repeat a new thought or behavior, the brain begins to create a new pathway. Another important method is to use evidence to reinforce new beliefs. Whenever you take action aligned with your new belief, acknowledge it and let your brain register the success. Over time, repeated experiences strengthen the new pattern and weaken the old one. Visualization is another powerful tool. Imagining yourself living according to the new belief helps the brain accept it as real. In addition, surrounding yourself with people, content, and environments that support your new beliefs accelerates the change. Point 14. Another essential pattern to understand is how your brain forms emotional habits, because emotions are closely tied to repeated thoughts and experiences. Your mind learns to respond to situations in a predictable way, and over time, these responses become automatic emotional patterns. For example, if you often react to challenges with frustration or anxiety, your brain strengthens these emotional pathways, making it more likely that you will feel the same way in similar situations in the future. Conversely, if you practice calmness, gratitude, or curiosity, your brain builds supportive patterns that allow you to respond more effectively under stress. Emotional patterns are particularly powerful because they influence your thinking, behavior, and even physical health. Chronic stress, anger, or sadness can affect your energy, focus, and overall well-being, while positive emotional patterns improve resilience, creativity, and clarity. One effective way to reshape emotional patterns is by becoming aware of your feelings in the moment. Instead of reacting immediately, pause and observe what you feel and why. This simple act interrupts the old automatic pattern and gives you a chance to choose a more helpful response. Another strategy is deliberate practice of positive emotional responses. For instance, starting a day with gratitude, practicing mindfulness, or intentionally finding small joys can slowly create new emotional patterns. Visualization can also help. Imagining yourself responding calmly and confidently to a stressful situation strengthens the brain's neural pathways for that behavior. Over time, these repeated practices create lasting change, and your emotional responses become more balanced and resilient. Additionally, your environment and social connections influence emotional patterns. Being around supportive, positive, and mindful people encourages your brain to adopt similar responses, while toxic or stressful surroundings reinforce. Point 15. Final point. The final and perhaps most powerful insight about mental patterns is that your future is built from the patterns you cultivate today. Every thought, action, habit, and emotional response strengthens a pathway in your brain, and over time, these pathways guide your decisions, shape your behaviors, and define the life you experience. This is why small, consistent actions matter more than occasional big efforts. Even minor positive choices, like reading a few minutes daily, practicing gratitude, or pausing before reacting, gradually build strong mental patterns that support success, focus, and growth. Conversely, repeated negative thoughts, procrastination, or fear-based reactions reinforce patterns that limit your potential. Awareness is crucial at this stage. By observing your automatic behaviors and the thoughts that drive them, you can start to consciously choose which patterns to strengthen and which to weaken. The process requires patience because your old patterns are deeply ingrained, but persistence creates lasting change. Another key idea is that mental patterns are interconnected. For example, developing a pattern of daily learning also strengthens patterns of confidence, problem-solving, and resilience. Similarly, cultivating emotional calm supports better focus and decision-making. This means that positive changes in one area of life ripple into others, multiplying their impact. Visualization, repetition, and deliberate practice are essential tools for this transformation. By imagining your desired outcomes and aligning small daily actions with them, your brain starts treating these experiences as real, creating neural pathways that make your goals achievable. Surrounding yourself with supportive people and environments also reinforces beneficial patterns, while reducing exposure to negativity prevents old limiting patterns from resurfacing. Ultimately, when you understand the power of mental patterns, you realize. That's it for today. Now you understand how powerful your mind is and how your patterns are quietly shaping your life every single day. The real question is, what patterns will you choose from now on? Remember, small changes create big results over time. If you take action today, your future will thank you. If this helped you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more powerful content like this. And tell me in the comments, what is one pattern you want to change in your life starting today?